So besides the battle reports I would also like to show you some list review videos. So these videos are going to be focused around one specific list, well, preferably a list that I've been playing for quite some time, and I would like to just share my experiences with these lists and explain why I think they have some strong points in them. So the first list that I'll be doing this with is my balanced kind of Empire list. So it's a list that I would gladly bring to any tournament that I participate in. The type of list I brought not only to competitive tournaments, but also I brought once to a Bloodstone tournament, which is a Dutch tournament which mostly focuses on having fun rather than bringing the hardest beatstick lists that you can field. But once you learn how to play with it and you learn what the units do and how it works together as an army, it actually turns out to be quite a potent list in my feel. And it's also the list that more or less, this list is the list that I brought to the WTC to provide our team with a list that could handle any other list at the event and at least and in a draw. And yeah, we at the WTC I mostly sacrificed myself to just take the hit and take out the nastiest lists that we thought as a team were going to hurt our other list the most. And my personal goal for WTC was to score a minimum of 50 points. And in the end I did score 51 points, so I was very happy about that. Yeah, especially considering that I had some situations where I felt like I could have gotten more points out of the matchup even. So without any further ado, let's get into the list. So the general of this army is a marshal. He's on a great griffin. He is an Imperial Prince and he has a shield. Otherwise, he has a lucky charm and the Witchfire Guard. For those of you that don't play Empire, I'll just explain it a bit. So as he is the army general on a great griffin, he has towering presence, so his leadership 9 bubble is extended to 18 inches. And for the Empire, I feel like this is definitely needed. Either you have to put your character on a mount that extends the inspiring presence range, or you have to put him in the unit with the household standard, which does the same. And then, the upgrade for the Imperial Prince is 175 points. It can only be given to your general. It increases his attacks from 3 attacks, which normally Empire characters have, to 4 attacks. And it also gives you the Light of Sun style, so that's magical sword. And attacks made with the weapon wound automatically, always have armor penetration 10 and are magical attacks. Yeah, it is the old Runefang. It used to be in the previous the progenitor of the 9th age for a long time already. But it's a universal answer to any nasty stuff that a lot of players nowadays bring. So any target with a low wound count and very expensive wounds, this guy can go after them. Because with the Witchfire Guard he has a 4+ ward save against magical attacks, and a lot of the targets that he will go for do have magical attacks. He has a 2+ armor save, he can reroll it once, he is still on a griffin, so he still has 4 hit points with toughness 5, and the griffin still has 4 attacks with strength 6. So he can go toe to toe with a lot of opposing characters. And yeah, it's it really fills in a gap in the army list in the sense that it can deal with stuff, with nasty stuff. It can just deal with it, and not only because it can actually deal with it because it has 4 attacks and with auto wound, and so even Sphinxes and stuff have to worry about him. but also because he can zone very, very effectively. He has a fly move of 8 inches with swift stride, so there's going to be a lot of units that don't want to go into his line of sight, because he can, any light unit he can just charge by his own and completely obliterate. He is 535 points, so for a monstrous, well, kind of monster mounted character, he's not even that expensive. The only downside is that he is quite vulnerable, because he only has 4 wounds, toughness 5, and a 2+ armor save, and 4+ ward save against magic attacks. But yeah, he's very well worth it, I find, in this list, just because of all the different things that he brings. Then we go to the battle standard bearer. This is, well, another model that you, yeah, I think with the Leadership 9 you might not even need it that much, but well, it just gives you so much certainty on top of your just normal Leadership 9 within the 18-inch battle wall of the general. So yeah, for nearly every army, a BSB is an upgrade that you can't really miss out on. And then for my BSB, I just needed the BSB itself basically, but Umpire has this great cheap way, 45 points of giving a model on foot +2 armor save and fear. So my Marshal has a 2+ armor save. He has a great weapon, so he dishes out 3 strength 6 attacks, which complements the unit quite heavily, especially if he's in the same unit as the prelate, because then in the first round of combat I have hatred, so I have 3 strength 6 attacks with hatred. Yeah, he's only 250 points, and that's also partly why I like him as much. Because, well, it's not a huge investment and you get a lot of return out of it. Then we go to the magic support of the army. So I used to run just a wizard adept, but I recently changed this to a wizard master. So the character that I used to use was a wizard adept on a griffin, and together with a prelate that would be my magic phase. And I experienced that I often had plenty of dice and not enough of interesting spells to cast. But this character in itself, the setup of the character was just a wizard adept on a great griffin with the Locket of Senna. This guy rocks. He's awesome. Because you go from a squishy wizard for 100 points for the griffin, from 3 wounds at resilience 3 to 4 wounds at resilience 5. The mobility you get is awesome. You get an extra 4 attacks at strength 6. And yeah, with the Locket of Senna, it's an incredible character. So how this works, you have a wizard, and the Locket of Senna means that if you go into a duel, you switch the stats of one of the model part of your wizard with one of the model parts of the opposing character. So for Greater Demons, for example, they only have one model part, so you just switch your wizard stats, which is 1 attack strength 3, for the stats of a Greater Demon, and then the Greater Demon gets, well, your stats. And on top of that, you still have a great Griffin. So in the end, your opposing character ends up with having 1 attack that's gonna hit you probably, because you don't switch out the offense and defense. But then he has strength 3 against your resilience 5. He still gets the weapons upgrades, but even if he has a great weapon, he just wins you on a 4+, whilst you're gonna have 4 attacks at strength 6 against his now resilience 3, and then still the attacks that he has on his profile. So against any cowboy character that just rides on his own, this guy can just completely wreck these guys. Because even if you refuse the challenge, you go to Discipline 0, you cannot strike, and I would have to charge, and I might do some wounds, so I'll probably win combat. Either I'll break you, or you'll get wounds from being unstable or supernal. Yeah, so yeah, this character, I have only managed to land it in a combat with another character once or twice. But that's mostly because enemies really have to take care of not getting the character caught by this guy, because it will just obliterate them. And as a wizard adept, he's only 375 points, so he's cheap. He's just cheap and multi-purpose, and I like that. So the reason why I upgraded it to a Wizard Master is because I felt like I didn't have enough ranged output, not enough flexible ranged output in this army. And yeah, I was wasting some of my magic dice on just useless stuff, basically. So I'll just see how it works out with the Pyromancy. So far I played one battle with it, and you can see it in the battle report section against the Infernal Dwarfs, but I found that I can't get to the Scorching Salvo is a very nice spell on this guy, because he's just so mobile, and he can go wherever he wants, basically, and then you have this 24-inch range of just burning everywhere, and also the rest of the Pyromancy lore it's nice for him, because you can just get the hurt wherever you want it to be. Yeah, so that's for the wizard. Then we go to the prelate. The prelate is in the list to give hatred to a unit, and to give me another channel, and yeah, otherwise he doesn't do a lot, but well, that's all what he's there for. So the only thing that I gave him is a shield and Death Warrant. Death Warrant gives battle focus to him, and it also gives battle focus to a friendly model with parent or support unit, if the prelate manages to inflict a hit on the enemy unit. Yeah, so battle focus for the unit and hatred for the unit. So that results in, if you count it out, getting more hits on your opponent than you have attacks in the unit. So imagine having a unit with 10 strength 4 attacks, with the prelate with Death Warrant, it's going to be about 12 strength 4 hits. And then you still have the attacks of the prelate. So it really vamps up the combat potential of the unit to a whole new level. Also because you get the bounce spells of the reroll to wound and the 5+ ward save in melee, and well, to a lesser extent the d6 strength 4 hits on the enemy and flaming attacks. But it's a very high value for money character. You could buy it plate armor, but I feel that by the time that the prelate has done his job, like in the first round of combat, you don't really need him anymore. So even if people strike against him, I'm perfectly fine by that. The only trouble would be if they fully focus on my prelate and manage to kill him before the unit gets to strike. That would be an issue, but he's mostly on the corner of the unit. Normally only 2 models can get to him. And then, so that's going to be including supporting attacks, 4 attacks or 6 attacks. So normally it would be 4s to hit, 4s or 3s to wound. So only against very offensive units you would find that he would die before he gets the chance to strike. Yeah, so he really increases the value and the damage output of the unit. And then together with him I have his buddy, the Inquisitor. This is an often overlooked character in Empire army building, I believe, because he always has multiple wounds D3. Always. And he has lethal strike. Yeah, and that is something that... It's a funny character, because he only has 2 attacks normally with strength 4. But in the Empire roster, the magic item Hammer of Witches sets your attack values to 5. So you end up with 5 attacks at strength 4, which for a character, if you're considering it, sounds like it sucks. There's no doubt about that. Any character with 5 attacks at strength 4, you think like, yeah, okay, that's not going to do a lot. But you have lethal strike and multiple wounds D3, and you're in a unit with a prelate, which automatically gives you a reroll to it because of hatred. You might have a reroll to wound because of the blessings, and I normally put them in a unit with the halberdiers with the flaming banner. And for my hereditary, for my mage, I am often tempted to go for the alchemy one, the Quicksilver Lash. So then I would be able to make my opposing unit flammable. So I also have a second instance of reroll to wound. So then if everything goes right, you're looking at a character with 5 attacks with reroll to hit, reroll to wound, lethal strike, multiple wounds D3 with a potion of swiftness. So he goes to agility 7. Any monstrous cav or any monstrous infantry or even dragons and stuff have to be very careful and very afraid of this guy. Because with 5 attacks that reroll to hit, reroll to wound, you end up having 1 or 2 wounds. Any 6 is going to ignore your armor, any regeneration save is bypassed by the flaming attacks of the unit, and you get multiple wounds D3. This hurts. It's another one of these. Together with the Marshal with the Light of Sun style, I have 2 characters in my army that can just not care about high value wounds, which is, well, a thing, I believe. Yeah, otherwise he has the Willows Ward, so he can just catch a chariot in the face. You can just challenge it out. And yeah, I recently gave him a repeater pistol with silver shots. That's a very recent change. I didn't have it at the WTC yet. I wanted to try it out because, yeah, there's so many of these multiple wound models around, and crazy guys on dragons and on coaches and whatever, that I felt like it was an interesting upgrade, because it's 100 points to upgrade him for him to have a repeater pistol that hits normally on a 3+, which is good. 3 shots on a 3+, with reroll to wound, lethal strike, and multiple wounds D3. So in the end, if you're looking at something that has toughness 5 or toughness 5, we'll just do that one first. You're looking at, if you don't move and are at short range, obviously that's not going to be always, but you're looking at 2 hits. You're looking at, well, 1 wound, maybe 2 with the reroll, and then with lethal strike D3 wounds. The chances are that you might just chip away 2 wounds. If you don't, you still have the standard shoot on a 4+. Yeah. Well, normally you could imagine that it's going to be long range and stuff, and you might not hit everything, but it's an upgrade of 100 points that might, even if it chips away just 1 or 2 wounds, it's worth the upgrade, I think. The only downside is that nowadays you can't march with a repeater pistol and shoot, unless you have the light troops rule, which he doesn't have unless he takes a horse. So I would think that maybe this is an oversight in the rules for the Inquisitor, because he is meant to be like this awesome guy that that's better at at fighting than the average Empire guy, whilst the normal Empire militia can march and shoot with a pistol. So I find it funny that the Inquisitor on foot doesn't, but maybe he gets light troops when he joins an infantry unit that has light troops. That could be, but I still find it a bit of a shame that it's not included in the rules of the pistol. Now we go to the core section. So I spoke quite a lot about the characters. I'll talk about them a little bit more with the core section, because this is where they are going to end up. So the heavy infantry block of 39 halberdiers with full command, they have the flaming standard. So this is because of the Quicksilver Lash that I would often take with the wizard. 39 infantry seems to me like it's the correct amount for a parent unit. Well, 39, 40, close to 40, 35 to 40. It's not that expensive unit that if you lose it, you lose a whole chunk of your army. And it's a big enough unit to be able to dish out a lot of damage, because I would normally run them either 6 or 7 wide. You get the order to fight in an extra rank. So if 7 wide, if you go for maximal damage output, I have the Inquisitor in there, the Prelate in there. So you end up having 20 attacks, because you're 3 deep, you have a champion. 20 attacks with Battle Focus Hatred, so you end up with about 24, 25 attacks at strength 4. And that is a lot. It can really decimate other infantry units mostly. And against monstrous cavalry, I have the Inquisitor. And it hurts more than most people anticipate, especially because you can combine it with a support charge from either of the support units I have. So, talking about that, I have 2 close combat oriented support units. I have a unit heavy infantry with just hand weapon shield. They are there to perform support charges against enemies of which I fear that they might deal so much damage to my support or parent units that I will not be steadfast anymore. And I have a unit heavy infantry support with halberds. Both units have champions, both units have a standard bearer. The champion is there to make sure that I have a minimum roll of 4 on my counter charge, because they often end up at being a maximum of 8 inches away, and I do not want to see this double 1 on my rolls and not be able to counter charge, because well, you can spend 20 points to just circumvent this problem. And also, in addition, the champion is there so that you can just challenge out annoying characters. Then we have twice light infantry. These are just crossbows. They are there to be able to chip off that one single wound that I still have to chip off somewhere to get a panic test, or to get something out of the way, or to just utility, just a little bit of zoning. And there's still a scoring unit, so for breakthrough and stuff they're still usable. Whilst it might not look like they could break through, because well, they have crossbows, so they're a dedicated shooting unit. Nobody expects them to do a breakthrough, so when you deploy them on a flank, and in the second turn you find yourself out of range of everything because your opponent has moved up. Oh no! You can just march forward 8 inches, do the same stuff in turn 5 or so, and then with a move order you can suddenly march 12 inches at once and find themselves in the deployment zone of the enemy. So compared to electoral cavalry, they bring double the wounds. They can still perform a little bit at range, well, because they're crossbows. Normally they hit on 4+. They're often at long range still, even with the crossbows. So they hit at 5+. So that's 3 or 4 hits, and it's not about the wounds that they do. It really isn't. So they're nice little units just to pull off the occasional counter charge, to just lock something in place by being annoying. And they're quite good at the job that they do, especially because they only cost 135 points, obviously. Then we have filled out our core, so we go to the special section. So first off, we have the Knights of the Sun Griffin. I would say that normally in any other Empire list, if you properly use the parent support system, Knights of the Sun Griffin are redundant. You don't need them for your damage output. If you, however, don't properly use the parent support system, Knights of the Sun Griffin are essential. Combine that with the fact that if you want to use the parent support unit system, you have to be properly oriented towards your enemy. I find that it's a very nice addition for a balanced army. If I run into opponents that are way more mobile than I am, which can happen a lot if you play an Empire army with just parent support units. Then the Knights of the Sun Griffin really shine because they can hold off a flank, and protecting flanks is very good in an Empire army because you don't want the enemy to come over your flanks. That is one of the big weaknesses of Empire. If you face an Empire army and you don't know where to start, just run to the flanks. Just take 2 turns, take 3 turns, run to the flanks and go over the flanks. Because all of the missile troops have to redeploy basically to be able to shoot on your flanks. They are unwieldy, all of them, so at least one round they are gonna have trouble. And then for the parent support unit, if they are in the way of each other, then well, they can't properly shoot you anymore or countercharge, or the whole system falls apart. So yeah, also against this army, if you want to rush the army, go for the Knights of the Sun Griffin, go through there, and then focus on the rest of the army. But then the idea of having the Knights of the Sun Griffin is that by the time that you manage to go through with your whole army, I have plenty of time to rearrange the rest of the army to focus on what you are doing on my flank. Yeah, so as they mostly have a flanking role, they have the Stalker Standard. They don't have a musician. Sometimes I miss the musician, but for me, these knights are actually just a sacrificial unit. And it might seem crazy, but if you factor in the idea that there are only 450 points for 12 wounds with a 2+ armor save at range, with toughness 4, it's still a decent unit. Like if you want to field the same equivalent kind of stuff with, for example, vampire cannons, you're looking at 600 or 650 points, I think. Yeah, so the Stalker Standard is there to just prevent the loss of very inconvenient wounds, like in the ruins, or because of the number 6 shamanism spell. And anyway, any army needs something that can go through terrain, in my view, or at least it opens up a lot of possibilities if you are able to just walk through terrain without any problems with at least one of your units, one of your combat units, that is. Yeah, so normally these guys don't really contribute to any main battle line fighting. They don't deal well with any other tooled up combat unit, but they don't have to. They are just there to put pressure on the flank sufficiently to make my opponents reconsider making use of the flanks, and they do a very, very, very good job at that. And in the end, they're also still scoring, so they can also still break through or whatever. Then we go to the Imperial Rangers. Yeah, this is I should actually talk about them maybe last, because they are there to just fill up the points. But in the end, I'm not too unsatisfied with them. Yeah, so you're only paying 90 points for this unit, which is obviously not a lot. And they still have 10 shots amongst the 5 models, so they're another source of just being able to pick off this 1 wound for a panic test. Yeah, and they can get in the way pretty well. They start halfway up the board. Normally they deploy in a position where they cannot be charged by the opponent in the first turn. In the second turn they walk to a position. So in my first turn they just walk around and don't do anything really. They shoot once and they don't really hit anything. And then in the second turn, my second turn, they block a very important charge for my enemy. Which I would always think that I would not be able to, because they can only march 8 inches. So I would assume that all of my opponents all the time would be able to counter this unit pretty effectively, but every single time they manage to get in the way of something. And it's just that they are very poor swords, because they always die. They really die. They're very good at dying, but they do it in a very graceful way. So yeah, I like them. In the well, for their value, I like them. I would never put a bigger unit of them down the table, because the value for money that you get from them is low. Also compared to just core infantry. If you look at the price just in the army list, you can also see for my army list that 10 light infantry are 135 points, 5 Imperial Rangers are 90 points, and then if you add more Imperial Rangers, they are actually cheaper than the light infantry. And they have twice as many shots, so you would say, wow, that's great. They have twice the amount of shots, and they can shoot with their bows, and they can march and shoot, and it's awesome. But they don't make use of the parent support unit, so every time that you get a standard shoot in with your light infantry, you won't get it in with your Imperial Rangers. Also, their footprint is bigger, and they can't countercharge. They are not steadfast, not even if they would be steadfast from their own ranks. So yeah, I would say that light infantry is a better choice for a gunline army at any time, rather than Imperial Rangers. Speaking about shooting, now we get to the real shooting in the list. So I wouldn't necessarily call this list gunline, but it has very high first turn shooting potential. Because of the Reiters. The Reiters, they have repeater guns. A lot of people would play them with pistols. But if you look at it, I'm not convinced by pistols anymore, because I played with them a lot of times, because I thought that pistoliers, or the Reiters with pistols, were a very good choice, because you get to go to the enemy, shoot with your pistols, and then from a unit of 5 guys you get 10 shots that hit on a 4+. So you get 5 hits, and then yeah, you get about 3 wounds, and yeah, then you're within 6 inches of your enemy. So if you are close to the enemy and you manage to do this, then it's great. If you're in the front facing of the enemy and you manage to do this, then chances are very high that the enemy will charge you and you will flee away and get just overrun, which is not ideal. So if you are in the front facing of your enemy, you're most likely to be at long range, so you hit on 5s anyway already. And I prefer to be at long range, more than 6 inches away from my enemies with my fast cav, because that means that they can still flee away, manage to rally, get away, and shoot again the next turn. So in that case, if you compare the repeater guns to the pistols, you end up having 15 shots. You are unwieldy, so you get a -2 for moving and shooting, but you are at short range, because your short range is 12 inches, so you hit on 6s. So you either have 15 shots on 6s, 10 shots on 5s. Obviously the 10 shots on 5s are better, but with the 15 shots on 6s you still manage to get about 2 hits, 2.5 hits. So that's still basically sufficient to get a panic test somewhere if you're shooting at a unit that already has been damaged by your other shooting, or you still manage to contribute to your entire shooting phase. And the difference between 10 shots that hit on 5s and 15 shots that hit on 6s, these are not the type of differences that constitute a very steady damage output for your army list. Yeah, so that's about that. Then the advantage that the Reiters bring are that you can vanguard with them, start first turn, shoot at an enemy, probably at long range, because you have to be outside of 12 inches after your vanguard. But then you're shooting 15 shots at 5s to hit, so that's 5 hits on any unit anywhere on the board, because, well, you have your vanguard, so that hurts way more than just having 10 shots that hit on 4+ for one round, because you set them up somewhere, preferably behind a wall, or in some terrain with your vanguard, because you don't care about the terrain then. And then you can just start blasting. Your opponent has to dedicate resources to this unit, because once they start to move within short range of this unit, you have 15 shots that hit on 4s. That hurts. That really hurts. Yeah. So whilst with Pistoliers you would be looking at long range shooting, or you have the one turn where you sacrifice a unit. Long range shooting for Pistoliers is at 5s to hit 10 shots. So yeah, that doesn't really do any damage. You do twice the amount of damage with your Reiters with this setup. Yeah, so I like them because you can just use them as a shooting platform, and then once the time comes that you really need to chaff somewhere, you can just you can still march 16 inches with them, and yeah, then still shoot with them if needed. So most opponents also target these guys at the start of the game, and I'm fine by that, because, well, then they don't focus on anything, on my combat troops mostly, that are going to carry the day in the end. Yeah, so it's a good unit. And then we go to the Imperial Armory section. We still have a Mortar to talk about and a steam tank. So we'll start with the Mortar. The Mortar is good against infantry units, but I also use it as an improvised cannon. So a lot of people often look at the Mortar and go like, that's only very good against infantry, isn't it? I had one guy one time who was playing Ogres, and he didn't care about my Mortar at all, until I shot at this, I believe they were the Bombardiers, which didn't have a standard for lookouts or for a low amount of models. And then I could target his Shaman with my Mortar in the unit. In turn 1 I managed to just smack 3 wounds on the guy, and I didn't see the Shaman anywhere near my lines for the rest of the game. Yeah, so that's a bit of a comical story, of course. But the Mortar really wrecks infantry units. Any infantry unit you have problems with ends up with a template with 6x6 or 5x5 if it misses the first time. At strength 3 or strength 2. It's not about the strength here, it's just about the sheer amount of hits that you get on a unit. Like, if you're in a 5x5 formation or 5x6 with a thick unit, if you manage to get in the first hit and your short range is at 24 inches, if you manage to get the first hit, then you kill off half of the unit. So of like 5x6 formation, the ideal target with toughness 3, you get 30 hits, you get 15 wounds with AP1. Yeah, that unit isn't gonna do a lot for the rest of the game if they really want to, if they're really one of the combat units in the enemy army. And then yeah, there's the dual purpose role of just shooting at, for example, a Plague Pendulum and Plague Monks. You can put the one hit with the strength 6 D3 wounds on the Pendulum and just kill off some of the other guys in the process. And then we have the steam tank. Yeah, the steam tank has a lot of synergy with other stuff in the list. Mostly because it has 7 wounds, toughness 6, 1+ armor save, unbreakable. And it wouldn't need anything else. It wouldn't even need its grinding attacks. I would be very happy with just this thing for possibly like 250 points if it didn't have any offensive output. It's fine. Yeah, so what it does in my list is to take care of a flank. I already told you with the Knight of the Sun Griffin that I wanted to take care of my flanks. Flanks are important for the heavy infantry and the support units to work. Because as soon as you can charge a support unit for the Empire and also the parent unit, and I am not able to countercharge with any of my support units on the charge that you do on my parent unit, you take away a lot of potential for me, because any of the support units always fight in 3 ranks. They always bring, if they're pristine, 3 ranks, a counter charge and a banner, so that's a combat resolution of 5. So they are really important to me. They are. A lot of people just focus on the parent unit and then they shoot away like 15 models, and I'm left with 25 heavy infantry in my parent unit, and I'm fine. But if you manage to take away the support units, then you're really making a difference. But obviously it's not really an interesting target, because anyway, you have 2 of those, and yeah, they don't really bring in any value. But the steam tank, so the tank offers great zoning potential, and it also is an investment into magic defense, because for a lot of people the tank is really a big problem mentally. So in the end, what it does, if you don't do anything to the tank, is that it'll go forward, it'll force itself into 1 or 2 of your units, and then it'll just grind them down a bit. If you manage to get it into a unit that either has a lot of wounds or doesn't really care about strength 5 attacks, like toughness 5 units, or just goblins, just standard infantry. If you manage to get this into the tank, then I am very sad, because then my tank is just grinding on stuff that's not valuable at all, and yeah, you just neuter the tank from doing its thing. You don't have to kill it, because I like it when opponents focus fire and all their efforts onto the tank, because if they do a Quicksilver Lash, I also often let my opponent cast Quicksilver Lashes on the steam tank, because it has 7 wounds, and it's as efficient as it is when it has had 2 wounds, 5 wounds, whatever. And with Quicksilver Lash you still have the D3 roll, so chances that you only do 2 or 3 wounds are quite high, so it would take you 3 magic phases to get through the tank, and that is fine by me. If you want to dedicate your entire magic phase into killing a steam tank, fine, it's 475 points that you just got there. It still has done its job, because mostly in the first 3 turns I need the zoning, and I need my opponents to be scared of it, and after that it doesn't get anywhere anyway, because the board is so spread out and then no one's near the tank anymore, so I don't get to take advantage of it anyway. But facing a steam tank is something that I also don't really like, because just it can be lucky. It can hit with its steam cannon, and strength 7, multiple wounds, D3, clapped wings. It can still hurt. Like I shot a couple of steam copters with it, and then some krakens, and then yeah, it likes getting attention. So that's all of the options in the list. Some random things that I didn't mention yet. So there's still some synergy that I didn't talk about between the Marshal on Great Griffin, the Wizard on Great Griffin, the Knights of the Sun Griffin, and the Steam Tank. As the Great Griffins are only large and cavalry, and they have towering presence, they are tall. They are large and tall. And the Knights of the Sun Griffin are also large and tall, and also the Steam Tank is large and tall. Because it also has towering presence. So that means that I can at any point also hide my Griffins behind the Steam Tank, and even behind the Knights of the Sun Griffin. A lot of opponents don't realize that I can hide my Griffins behind the Knights of the Sun Griffin. Whilst it's a very essential part of my play, because any magic missiles, my Wizard on a Griffin, in the end he only has 4 wounds at toughness 5, so 2d6 strength 4 is painful. is painful when your wounds are a bit more than 100 points per wound. Yeah, but I can use the Knights of the Sun Griffin that anyway are there just to protect the flanks, to just soak up some damage. I can do the same with the Steam Tank. I can make some mobile terrain, in the sense that I can just hide behind it with my Griffin characters. And the Griffin characters on their own, they provide so much mobility and zoning potential to the list that otherwise you really lack with Empire. So this is an Empire list that can actually respond to the enemy and not be fucked after deployment, and the enemy sees some gaps in your lines. Yeah, I planned to talk about this list for about a half an hour. I ended up talking about it for 45 minutes, so I hope that I didn't go too deep into the list to not make it interesting anymore for you guys. Yeah, this is the list. Please tell me what you think of this type of video, because I would like to do some more lists of myself. Also, if you have any list that you would like to have me discuss, or rather discuss yourself even, and allow me to put on the channel, then I would be most grateful. If you want to do a submission for me to publish, I would like to have some images of your armies with it, and a description of about half an hour, because I think that's when you get into the real list building considerations, rather than when you just talk about a list for 5 minutes and go like, yeah, I have this and it works very nicely. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and see you the next time.